The other day, I was having a conversation with my big brother, Andy, and we were talking about his passion for fencing. That's fencing, plunging, stabbing, poking with a saber, with a rapier, with an epee, with a foil, poke, poke, jab, jab, zap, zap. And I asked him in a good little sisterly way, what kind of fun is that? Getting stabbed and poked to death. How can you possibly find joy in that? To which he responded in good brotherly fashion, oh yeah? What about you, Christine? You're the one that gets up on a Saturday morning at 5 a.m. to make a 7 a.m. meeting. That's an hour away drive, one way, shaking in your shoes the whole time, just so that you can give a 5 to 7 minute speech in front of a bunch of people you don't even know. And you call that fun? Which just goes to show, ladies and gentlemen, that there's still people out there that would just as soon get stabbed to death than give a speech. And if you're one of those people, and you're welcome to raise your hand, I would have joined you. 30 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I'd have liked to be poked rather than give a speech. And it would come from the space where I came from, which is growing up as a kid, I was so introverted. I was the original introvert. I was the shy one who just didn't know how to get along with others. And so in the schoolyards, when they would drag out the ball box, this great big box on wheels, they'd carry it out into the playgrounds, and all the kids would grab the balls. Every one of them would go scattering to the winds, everyone but me. And I found what I myself going into the ball box. I'd drop into the box, and there I'd sit in this great big tall dark box, hoping against hope, looking up, will somebody come play with me? And eventually that box became a personality. It was me and my box. And that box was kind of a personality too. It was kind of edgy and kind of square and kind of pokey. And eventually I found myself in a space where I needed to regroup. I needed to redo my life. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so what I did, it was part of the building blocks to my restructuring, included joining the world's famous best public speaking and leadership program called Toastmasters International. And like a lot of speakers, I sat in the back of the room, quaking in my shoes, wondering what did I just sign up for to feel this bad? But the reason I stayed was because of you. It was your encouragement, your support, your canniness, your courage that allowed me to maybe think to myself, if that person can get on stage, maybe I have a chance too. And I started with the simple things like word of the day or joke master. And eventually I gave a speech and I won the blue ribbon. There are some Toastmasters out there who know what I'm talking about, this blue ribbon. You'd think this was the Academy Award. I had this baby on my refrigerator for the longest time because what it told me was I was good. I was worthwhile. I didn't know how to engender this self-esteem for myself, so it had to come from without first before I could find it on the inside. And I found I liked you so much, I decided to join the leadership track in Toastmasters. So I became an officer. And the more I became an officer, the more speeches I had, the more speeches I had, the more officer roles I took, and eventually came a weaving of a personality that you see before you today. And To add the whipped cream and the cherry on top of the sundae, along came these world championships of public speaking. 80,000 people competed for the world championship in 2012, my last championship. And I got to go to those championships. This last time I came back with a big bodacious trophy. I'm not going to show you that, but I came back, and here's the thing. Every time I came from these world championships, I gave a seminar. I always gave a training, and the trainings were called the Ready, Set, Go program. Because what I came to understand is I couldn't keep what I have unless I give it away. So I had all these trainings. And eventually someone said to me, well, why don't you write a book? I mean, it seems like you're kind of a speaker person. Why don't you put together a book? So what happened during the pandemic, my whole right leg went off. I had a hip surgery, a foot surgery. I couldn't walk. I was stuck at my desk. And so every morning at about 8:15 in the morning, I would pray and I'd say, dear God, help me with this book. Tell me what you want me to do. And I would do this in 20-minute increments. I'd have the timer on for 20 minutes, and then I would start working. And then as soon as the timer went off after 20 minutes, I found I was already knee deep in the book. So then I turned the timer on for another 20 minutes and another 20 minutes. And I found that that's the way to handle any project that's daunting, is just 20 minutes at a time. I remembered the adage, how did the ant consume the tiger? Bite by bite, and bite by bite, and bit by bit, eventually came my book. So I went from a ball box to a book. And that story is in this book, along with all the trainings that I've given these many, many years. And now I have an opportunity to take you on a little journey, as I would with any one of my seminars, using the Ready, Set, Go program. So we're going to go into the chapter of ready, and then we're going to learn how to get set, and then we're going to learn how to go. So let's go ahead and get ready. How do we do this? The first thing I want you to know is public speaking is a process. There's no graduating. It's progress, not perfection. So you can lower your shoulders now and say, okay, it's a little bit at a time now. Public speaking is a process. It's not a destination, and you're not going to graduate. So here we go. I always like to keep that in mind when I'm speaking. The first thing I would like to share with you is creative visualization. If you can visualize it, you can have it. And this is well known to our Olympians, as we see them before they give that dive, before they go out and fence or whatever it is they're doing, they are sitting there visualizing with their eyes closed. How are they going to take that dive? How are they going to throw that javelin? Because the subconscious does not know the difference between what is actually happening and what you're running in your mind. So before you give your presentation, see yourself as connecting. See yourself as, one of the things I use is birds. I visualize birds coming out of my mouth and flowing right to the audience, to the very listeners who need to hear what I am about to say. I see the right people at the right time joining me for my presentation. And I see this flow going back and forth between my speaking and your listening. There's another image that I use for creative visualizations, and that is, I've already given the speech and I'm coming back for a second time. You liked me so much, this is my second presentation, no worries. Another way that I've used creative visualization is when I went to Florida for the last World Championships, I made space in my luggage for the trophy. I was so convinced I was going to come back with a trophy. I made space in my luggage and I came back with a trophy, which goes to show nature abhors a vacuum. She really does. So if you've got a closet full of stuff or whatever it is that's packed in your life and you'd like something new, clear it out so that what wants to come to you can come to you. Part of getting ready also includes taking a look at fear. What is fear? Some people say fear is an anagram for false evidence appearing real. Others might say, and this is mine, that's face everything and receive. I prefer to head on right into whatever it is I find fearful and see it's just some kind of imaginary thing I've cooked up in my head. So I strongly recommend you take a look at what is going on to your own internal dialogue. Example, one of the things I found in my life was that I was using the word worry a lot. Oh, I was worried about this and worried about that. And I was kind of a worrywart. And I took the word worry out of my vocabulary. And today I don't worry. The same thing goes with hate. I took hate out of my vocabulary and I stopped hating. There's some things that we say to ourselves that we could remove and upgrade our internal dialogue, and particularly when it comes to fear. And one of the reasons why we have fear is it's our reptilian brain is activated when we think there's something going on that's flight or fight. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's just an old way of taking care of ourselves, if you will. And fear comes from the need to be right, the need to fit in, the need to control, or just plain old habit like the worrywart that I was telling you about. Another reason why we go into fear is our perfectionism. And perfectionism turns into procrastination, turns into paralysis. So when you find yourself procrastinating or in that analysis paralysis, shake it off a little bit and get back to your authentic self and realize you don't have to be picture perfect on screen. And it's actually your authenticity, your seeming mistakes that actually endear you to your audience. And that's another thing I'd like to share with you is there's no such thing as a mistake, only experience. And experience tells you where you need to work on your next project. That's all that happens whenever we find ourselves stumbling. We can just pick ourselves up again with a laugh and say, there I go again. And so can your audience with you. I believe that if we were to reframe our fear into authenticity, then you start moving your energy outward. And here's what I mean. What does fear look like? Fear is heart pounding, sweaty palms, little thing going on with the face, caught mouth. That's what fear looks like, right? Okay, so now we're going to move that off to the side for just a sec. And now we're going to have a new paradigm. Suppose you're at a birthday party and you see your best beloved about to open your package. It's a package you've been waiting for 6 months, and it's the right size and the right color, and it's what they've been wanting for months, and they're about to open it. And what happens? Heart starts to going. Hands get a little chilly, a little cotton mouth. But now it's anticipation rather than fear. And as you've noticed, as I was talking about fear, I was kind of, but now as I'm talking about anticipation, the energy moves forward. And it's all about that flow that I was talking about, like with the birds. You want to keep that energy moving forward. I find that public speaking is actually a very spiritual experience. It's all about the give. It's not about the get. And many times what I consider is the St. Francis prayer, where he talks about it is in the giving that we receive. And that's really the truth. When you become a public speaker, you'll understand that you love giving to your audience and you can't wait for them to open you up as the present. Another way to deal with fear is breathing. I have to remember that right now. As a matter of fact, most speakers early on, they have a tendency to take a breath and keep on talking, and they forget to exhale. They get a little blue around the gills for that. So what I've discovered is something called Tong Lin. Tong Lin is an ancient Tibetan meditation used to transform pain and suffering into healing and peace. And so what they do is they breathe through the nose and they exhale through the mouth, and they breathe through the nose. I breathe in suffering, I exhale peace. Well, having been in the hospital a lot, I don't really relish the idea of breathing in a lot more pain right about now, but I've kind of transposed this into I breathe in courage, I exhale confidence, I breathe in enthusiasm, I exhale love. And so as and you can practice this breathing before you come on stage, but it's great to get into the practice of breathing so that when you are actually speaking, you'll automatically be doing this. But I find myself breathing a la Tong Lin while I'm in the post office, while I'm sitting in a meeting waiting for it to start. Just a big reminds me of where I am and that I'm here right now. Another way of dealing with fear, and I'm doing it right now, you'll notice I'm putting my hands to my chest, kind of a thing. Well, this is actually a form of something called self-soothing. And what it is you put your hand to your heart, you can adjust a sleeve, you can rearrange your collar. But while I'm in whatever process is comfortable for you now, what's happening is I'm grounding myself with my hand to my body and saying, I'm going to live through this. Okay. But it looks like, oh, she's just putting her hand up there. No, I'm actually having an internal conversation saying, this is how you deal with fear. People ask me, they say, well, how do you memorize? Here's how you memorize. You take your speech, and before you go to sleep, you read it. Blah, 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 blah. And then you turn off the light, click, and you go to sleep. And then you wake up in the first morning and you'll hear your speech. It'll be, crackling in the sheets the way mine often are. Oh, there it is. I pull it up and I start reading again, and first thing in the morning. And if you were to do that, when you go to bed at night, read your presentation. And when you wake up, first thing, read your presentation. Do a couple of these and you'll have it memorized. I also want to say for memorizing, here's something that I love to do. It's called the walk and talk. And what happens is when I walk and give my presentation, several things happen. The first is I only have so much air. So you'll notice there's no uhs or ums, right? And the other thing is what wants to be said comes out. The very pith and marrow of what I want to say is coming out right now, what I really care about, because I only have so much oxygen. So what wants to come out is coming out. So that by the time I hit that 60-foot stage, that speech is in my body, full on inside. I have muscle memory and I have that speech down cold. And along with that, you lose a little weight. So if you're looking to lose some weight, put on some tennis shoes, get your speech, and just start walking with it and feel it become alive in your body. Always stand before you speak. A lot of speakers, they sit in the chairs way back there, and now for Christine Robinson. And then it takes all this time to get to the stage. I'm a mess when I arrive. The audience has stopped clapping, and I'm receiving a cold audience. So you want to be upstage on the wings, or at least close to the stage, so that one, you're standing and you're breathing. Two, you have an opportunity to try your eye contact with your audience before you even get there. And you also have the opportunity to smile. I'm not much of a smiler. I'm still kind of the morose mama. So I need to practice my smiling, but this gives you a chance to do just that. So you're already in connection with your audience before you even take the stage. This is so vital, is to be standing before you're called on. So now we've got the get ready. So how are we going to get set? Okay, I'm going to take you into what you need to build a great speech. The first 30 seconds of your presentation are the most important, and the last 30 seconds of your presentation are the most important. You have 30 seconds with which to capture your audience attention. And the best way to capture your audience attention is through humor, is through a little fugazi, something that lightens the mood. You don't want to get into some deep couch therapy. You want to get into some get to know you time, and humor is one of the best ways to do that. I said the last part of your speech is also important because last words linger. What do you want your audience to do? Do you want them to be inspired? Do you want them to be informed? Do you want them to take action? Is this an educational piece? So that when they go home, they remember exactly what it was that you said. 3 things for every speech. The audience wants to know who you are. They want a purpose. Why am I listening to you? And they want a structure that they can follow. If you notice my opening, it had humor in the beginning. You know a little bit about me, and I told you where we were going, and you know why you're here, which is to learn more about public speaking. So you want all of that right up front, so then the audience can kind of relax and then take you in even more in their listening position. I say a speech is like a meal. You start out with something appetizing, something sexy, something scintillating. Oh, make them want more, mouth-watering. Yes? Okay. And then we're going to move into the body of the speech, the main course. Main course with 3 side dishes. Purpose, 3 points. Then we move into the dessert, something so satisfying. Think of your speech as a meal. Again, it's all about what you can give to your audience, that flow back and forth. I'm going to feed this audience. I want to talk a little bit about pausing. I could probably do some more pausing right now. I know I'm giving you a fire hose of information, but I only have so much time, and there's so much I'd love to share. But pausing is very critical. It allows your audience to catch up with you. You as a speaker are like a tracker going through the jungle. You've got the path before you, but you got to make sure your audience is with you at the same time. So it's okay to every once in a while ask, are you with me? Or raise your hand or do something, but get some more audience connection. You always want to connect with your audience. A good speech is like a great massage. You want to always keep in contact with the body. You don't want to have any surprises, and you want constant contact with your audience. I always like to talk about the Aborigines that came to us, a story about the Aborigines that came from Father Tom Weston. And he talks about how the Aborigines were viewed as they were walking along and then they'd stop. And they were walking along and then they'd stop. And then they were walking along and then they'd stop. And they were actually asked why they were walking in this mysterious way. And they responded, we're waiting for our soul to catch up with us. We don't want to leave without our soul. And I say, the speaker is the Aborigine and the audience is his soul. And we don't leave our soul behind. And I don't leave you ever, ever behind. A little bit about topics real quick. Make sure it's something you're passionate about. It's something that you know. It can be anything. It can be your last Christmas with your dad or your favorite car, and then build on that one topic. My topic for the World Championships was the empty chair. And I talked about how I left an empty chair for my family while I was out running and gunning, thinking I wasn't hurting anybody but myself, until one day somebody came forward and said, this is what you left your family, was this empty chair. So I took that empty chair and I put it on stage with me. And then I began giving all this talk about empty chairs in our lives, people who've been disenfranchised, people we've abandoned, people we've ignored, we ourselves. Are we living the life that we were born to live? Can we assume our chairs? And to this day, I am known as the empty chair woman. I still have people coming up with little miniature chairs and handing them to me and say, how's the empty chair going, Chris? So when you can find yourself a topic like that and build on it, that's the kind of speech that they will remember, because when they remember your stories, they will remember you. And that's how you find yourself becoming known in the speaker's world. Now we're going to go. We've got the ready, we've got the set. Now we're going to go. We're going to go to the venue. Number one, you've got to go to the venue. Find out how far it is. How much gas are you going to need? What about parking? Is it metered parking or is there a parking garage? When you get into the facility, where's the lights? Where's the air conditioning? Where's the bathroom? It's like you're going to present a birthday party for your audience, and you need to know where all of that stuff is, including the cords and the electrical parts, so you're not caught short on this. What else did I want to say? And while you're up there, visualize success. Visualize where your audience will be. Visualize what you're going to wear. And that brings one very important topic, is the backdrop determines the color. When I was competing, they had a black backdrop and a bunch of white guys wearing black suits, and they all looked like little bubble heads. They're all little white balloon heads going back and forth on the stage. Nobody could see their body, but they could sure see these little white heads. If you know the backdrop, as you can see, mine's a pale one. I didn't wear something white. That would have really washed me out completely. I always make sure that I have no patterns. The earrings are not too flashy. Nothing is detracting from my message. And while I was competing, I met up with a guy from Nairobi. He's a man of color. And he said to me, Christine, I always bring two suits. I bring a dark one and I bring a light one, depending on the backdrop, so that I don't fade into the backdrop if I'm wearing dark against dark. You want to know what the backdrop is so that you are at your best when you come forward on stage. One last little piece before we start to conclude, and that is while you're speaking and you want your audience to agree with you, you start to nod your head and you walk toward your audience and you nod your head. And what starts to happen, and I'm seeing it happening even now on these squares, is people are beginning to nod their head. So if you want somebody to agree with you, and it doesn't have to be on stage, it could be with your spouse trying to get you to go along with something, try it with smiling and walking toward the person and saying, ha, 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 ha. So that's just a little bit of some stagecraft that I wanted you to have. And I keep saying there's this is last, but there's one more last I want to share. And that is, okay, so now you're on stage. What's the first thing you're going to do? The first thing you're going to do is probably what I just did too right now, is just a small pause. There's something about allowing your MC to return to his, her, their chair, allowing your audience to settle down into their chairs again. That tells the audience you are courteous, you are courageous, and you are kind. And that is the kind of impression you want from your audience, is that you had the courage to wait until everybody got settled so that you can achieve connection with the global brain that is your audience, because every audience is different. Every audience has its own personality. Even a Zoom audience has its own personality. Last words linger. In my book, the last part of the book says something to the effect about a conversation I had with a world champion public speaking, Craig Valentine. Craig Valentine said that when he achieved first place in the world championships of public speaking, he came home with his trophy. But the first thing he did was go to a bookstore and buy another book on public speaking. Because as he said, if I don't keep moving, I'll get run over. So I suggest for all of us, let's keep moving. Let's not get run over. See yourself in a bookstore. Doesn't have to be my book, it can be anybody's book, but as long as you're out there and moving and keep growing and continue, because I have learned that even though I go round and round on some things, each time I get to know it a little better at a little higher perspective, like Christmas tree lights surrounding a tree. I get a new perspective every time I give a speech, every time I have the opportunity to evaluate and listen, because that's part of public speaking too. It's the listening, it's the speaking, it's the blending together, the coming together of both that will achieve in the end confidently speaking. I'd like to turn control of the meeting back to our MC, Bob Bednars, and thank you for your wonderful company today. God bless.
Thank you, Christine. I am mesmerized. It's just like, I love the part that it's a never-ending process, and I've learned so much about you, not only from reading your book, but from your presentation today. So that concludes our recorded portion of the video of the presentation.